On this episode of the Leadership Locker, I have Brandon Steiner. He is a New Yorker who owns Steiner Sports, which is now owned by Fanatics, which should tell you plenty. I guess how people categorize him is a sports marketer, but he sells sports memorabilia. But it all began after he was managing and helping people like Mickey Mantle, Lawrence Taylor open up sports bars, get gigs for different things, and just helping them sell some of their, autographed property and things of that nature. This dude is like a full-bred entrepreneur. He's huge in New York, and his collectible business is probably something you've come across numerous times and didn't even know it, especially if it had anything to do with the Yankees. He's had deals with Notre Dame. He's had deals with the Cowboys, the Yankees, obviously, Giants. The guy is legit. And I was in his podcast studio, and I went and I interviewed him, and it was a blast. Check out his perspective and his little rant about entrepreneurship. Let's talk about your new book, Living on Purpose. What's going on? Why'd you write it? What has changed since your last book?
Well, so much has changed. I think in my life, things are constantly changing.
Yeah.
Whether you're awake and kind of aware and want to take notice of the change is up to you. Mm-hmm. And you go through periods of it. You're not sitting there analyzing your life on a day-to-day, but I think as you get older, you start doing it a little bit more often. Yep. I think for me, there was just a bunch of game changers. I think the number one thing why I wrote the book is like you spent all your life trying to have some relevance. You spend your whole life trying to be successful, really more on the financial end of it. You go to conferences, read books, get all the help you can, and try to make as much money as you can and be successful in business. And I think that there's a little bit of an imbalance. And I'm not talking about work-life balance, but I just think for me it was just, I felt out of whack a little bit. And I still love working, love the money grab. I do a lot of things just for the money, and I still do. I don't have a problem with that. But I just felt like there was some other things I wanted to attend to, more significance. I kind of classify, like, I never really wanted to be successful in my life. That wasn't of interest to me, even as a kid.
Well, what do you?
I was interested in being, I wanted to be extraordinary. No, I wanted to go way past success. You know what I mean? I wasn't interested in just, doing really well. I wanted to be like the best there ever was at something. And I wanted people to remember that I had been involved. I wanted people to know that I had been involved in whatever industry I decided to choose. I wanted to disrupt it, I wanted to change it, or I wanted to invent it. I wasn't really sure, but I knew I was going to do something special. Yep. Not just, and that's, if you really look at my track record, even as a kid, I was just perpetually looking at things differently. I knew that I had a certain view and a perspective that didn't really look at things the same way most other people did. And even as a young kid at college, the parties I threw, the businesses I got into even early on, I was just trying to figure things out. I never approached them the same way as most other people did.
Like, give me an example. Like, what do you feel like you were doing differently than other people, or literally was it just your DNA? Like, did you feel like I'm ahead of these guys?
I felt like I was ahead of these guys. First of all, I had a mom that would always push me and question, that your first idea is not your best idea. Yeah. What else you got, and what makes you so different, and how you're serving, how you're solving. But it's just so many different things that I would do. You go on the beach. I just wrote about this on my blog the other day, but I went to the beach. I was selling knishes and then figured out how to, and cold soda. And on a 100-degree beach in Coney Island, there's a lot of wackiness, and it's hard to trek up and down the beach. And the soda's heavy, and you need to sell that stuff because you want to make some money, and it's also getting warm. So, I decided to take the Oreo cookies, which was 3 sleeves, a big pack, and put them into little, 3 or 4 cookies in a little baggie, and that would draw all the kids. So now remember, there's no Mrs. Fields cookies or any of that back then. Yeah. So I'm up and down the beach, Oreo cookies, hot knishes, cold soda. Meanwhile, all the kids are running up to me because they want the Oreo cookies, and then the parents come over and I whack them for a knish or a soda, and those are little things like just in all my hustle. Up in Syracuse, the parties I threw were just different. Instead of just throwing a party at your school, I threw a party to compete. All the schools up in Syracuse could compete. Nice. Why? The need was, maybe you want to meet some people outside your school.
Expand the pie.
So you expand the pie, and what had access to me was pledges. So I have the pledges go around to all the schools. Hey, you want to meet girls and guys from the different schools? We're having a party. Who's the craziest school in Syracuse? So we're going to compete. And I drew like thousands of people at a party with no money, no advertising, and made thousands of dollars. Like that's, and I could just go on and on with those kind of ideas. And I think that I always looked at things differently. Always had a great promotional mind. I got that from my mom. My mom was a great promoter, a businesswoman. And that's the last book, You Gotta Have Balls, with all the stuff she taught me, which is be fearless. And this is what I tell people all the time. It's like, we all have that. You say, is that in your DNA? No. I think we all have that. The question, what we all also have is fear and some negativity and some things that kind of get in the way. And for me, my mother was always like, be fearless. Really, don't be soft. You got to have balls. Like, go all the way with that. Don't stop there. And how are you serving? How are you solving? Solving a problem takes a lot of thought. And I think that was a differentiate. Like, I wasn't the smartest kid in school, but I was the hardest thinker. And I would be a relentless thinker. And a lot of people would say, if you look back at my yearbooks and everything, Brandon, you're intense. It was because I would take something and just keep grinding and think of it, we can do this, let's try that. And most people kind of, after they come up with a pretty good idea, they kind of stop. They're good. We're good. I hate those two words. We're good. Yeah. It's like those are two words I never use when it comes to, when I'm trying to figure stuff out.
So you're different, clearly, because of your mother's influence. But what was it like if you're a kid and you're going to hang out with other kids and everyone's moms are just kind of like, nice and easygoing and very nurturing and everything, and you got this hard-hitting mom who's just like, get your shit together, don't stop thinking, be a savage. I mean, like, was that weird for you seeing other moms like that didn't, or did you feel like you were blessed? Like,
I thought it was special. Until I realized how poor we were, and then I was feeling a little bit bummed because sometimes, we just didn't have enough money for some of the things that a kid should have. But, my mother was such a character. I was never feeling that, I always felt like her energy level and her thinking pattern was always a blessing in a lot of ways. The money stuff in our family was rough there for a while when you don't have food or, you're living in a substandard place. That's always troublesome, but it also could be very motivating. Yep. So, what I think is, and I'm going to get on a little rant, is I just feel like, schools just need to really adopt, because I feel like, although I was an odd kid growing up, I don't think the kids today are that odd. There's a lot of kids like me out there now, more than ever. Oh, yeah. I was such an odd kid because I was so entrepreneurial, hustling and grinding. There wasn't a lot of me out there, but I think there's a lot of kids out there now, and we're just not adopting in our schools today to impress upon kids how it works, and to support the kids that are thinking like this, but also to show them, because my biggest knock is kids come to me all the time up here that are 15, 14, 16 years old that have already started businesses and stuff, and I really tip my cap off, but nobody's explaining to them the back end of it. Nobody's explaining to them some of the P's and Q's that has to happen, and I think that we should have more of that conversation in our schools about how to open up a bank account, how to hire people, some of the rules and regulations as you grow a company, how you find office space, how you predict how big your company should be, how to write business plans. Like, this is what kids want. Yeah. And yet you don't touch any of that stuff till you get to college. Yep. And in some cases you don't touch it at all. Yep. And by the way, just because you're a music major or just because you're into literacy or writing or media doesn't mean you shouldn't learn how to do those things too, because you could be an entrepreneur in medicine, or you could be an entrepreneur in doctor, you still got to learn how the business part works. And I can't believe how many doctors and lawyers that are phenomenal doctors and lawyers but don't have any business sense. And that's just not fair. And what it does is it holds back on the entrepreneurism in this country as overall. And slowly and gradually we're slipping in this country from the what's next and coming up with the next idea. And other countries are doing that more and more. And I feel like in this country, more small businesses are closing than opening every year by a dramatic amount. And that is very bad. This country was built on small business entrepreneurs of saying, I got an idea. And when you see more of them closing than opening, and us not promoting the small business, not promoting the entrepreneurial, hey, let's go do it, boy, that makes me really nervous, and that makes me sad. Yeah. Because not everybody has the parents like my mother to support that.
Do you think they're closing because there was a lack of education, or to your point of doctors and lawyers, like maybe they're just technically smart but they don't have a Brandon around, you know what I mean? Like, are they just missing that person, or they just don't have the knowledge to do it for themselves?
They don't have the knowledge to do it themselves, and they're getting outsmarted by some smart business that understand about merger, acquisition, and figuring out how to go blend it all together.
Yeah.
But we don't realize as consumers that ultimately we're cheating ourselves. You know, yeah, is it easy to go on Amazon and click and pick up a few items? Yeah. But how about the fact that you say, I'm saving time, I'm saving money. Okay. But how about the fact that you can't go down on Main Street and pick up a loaf of bread anymore? How about the fact that the 3 houses next door to you are now, you can't sell them? Because that was the guy who owned the store on Main Street, and that was the guy who was manufacturing some product that now got ousted by Amazon. So at some point, you know, your real estate is now softening. You have a lot of control in a few companies, which is definitely not what's going to ultimately help in the long run in this country. And by the way, I love Amazon. I mean, they do fill a big niche, but it's important that we don't get lazy about the whole thing, because at some point you are going to lose creativity, and you're going to lose that little entrepreneur spirit, the what's next, the what else, which is what I live and love. I mean, how great is it when you're walking down a street and you see some store that you'd never even heard of, like, wow, I wonder what, that's gone. And a lot of those little ideas are ideas that lead to huge ideas, right? And that's what scares me and bums me out. And to me, it starts in the schools. We need to promote entrepreneurism, not only as a business tool, but as a life tool to get this country back creating, thinking, and about what's next, and growing, and being the vibrant country that we are. That's what scares me.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I'm sure it's not the direction we thought we were going, but
any
you know,
direction,
but like, this is kind of where my head's at. We thought I live it on purpose. It's like, even though this book is geared towards a slightly older audience, you know, I'm in love with the youth today. A lot of people get on the millennials, but I think what's going on today with the responsibility that our young ones are ready to take on for some of the screw-ups that some of us we've made with the way we handle this planet, the way we handle our resources, the way we treat each other. I'm very optimistic about this new generation that's popping up that's, you know, under 20.
Why do you think, I'm with you, and I think I interviewed someone not long ago who's like, millennials, whatever you think about them, you need to just switch off, because they are the hardest working, hungriest, they have
They're different working.
Yeah.
They get answers a lot quicker than we ever did, and that pisses me off, but hey, you know, and they have some issues with titles, and there's, you know, the problem is they're a little more abrupt about what they will and won't do. Where we never really, if a boss said, hey, you got to work till 11, you did it. Now, you know, they want, you know, millennials have a different set of agenda, you know, but their level of smartsmanship, I call it, their level of smartsmanship is outstanding. And yeah, it's a little frustrating because they could do a lot more in a lot less time than we ever did. But, you know, what I like is their commitment to trying to make this planet better. And there's a high level of entrepreneurs. They're not willing to stay with what's been given them. They want to make it better. We got to support them. We got to go get behind that and give them the avenues and roads to do that. That's the purpose of this book, is like, don't stop. Don't stop. Don't slow down, but just get the pause button going. You know, let's take a pause from it. Let's see what we have going, and let's see how we can grow from there. So, you know, I am a fan of some balance, some form of respect for some of the other pillars. It's something that my generation probably kind of missed, because it was just a sprint to try to make as much money as you can, no matter any way you could. And I think that that's wrong, because it leads to a lot of other problems.
In your business, which is very niche, like, and you are obviously like up here on it, like, I don't know how much competition there is or whatever, but how do you look at the face of competition when you might be fans of them, which are those entrepreneurs? Like, do you ever look at it and say, I'm not sure I could start outthinking some of these kids, or?
No, I think I can outsmart them all.
Nice.
But I don't know if I can or not, but I because I'm adapting, I'm adjusting, I'm on social media. I'm not afraid to realize there's a ton of stuff I don't know, and surround myself with those people. I'm not giving in, I'm not giving up. I understand some of the advantages some of the young ones have with online and applications and apps, and you know, some I'm going after it, but they don't have the experience I have either. I'm not afraid of competition. I think competition is important. As long as they're making whatever it is we're competing about better. So, you know, I gave a talk to the taxi cab and limo about 5 years ago. I remember this distinctly because they were all flipping out with Uber and Lyft coming in. I'm like, are you guys crazy? This is the best thing that's ever happened. Because they were all thinking they're going to put me out of business. No, they showed you that there was real real growth opportunity in something you guys have been sitting around forever. And now they realize that all of us could grab a quick Uber, grab a quick car. This is the best news they ever had. Now we're all, instead of going to buy a car, or instead of maybe getting on the train, we can grab a quick Lyft or Uber. Yep. So that makes the opportunity for you even that much greater. The question is, can you get on your game? Yep. Can you participate with clean cars, great service, incorporate yourself into some of these apps, which is very doable. You're more in business now. Why? Because they increase the size of the category. So when I deal with competition, because people always come in here and say, Steiner, I could do what you do. What's hard is to get some athletes, they sign some stuff, you bring them on some appearances, and I always welcome to, but the question is, are you going to make our industry better? Are you going to do it right and come up with something that I haven't thought of? Because if you do, I'm a major player in the industry, and as the industry grows, I'll grow a little bit. Do I want to be one up by a competitor? No, I'm still thinking, I'm still trying to do that myself. But if somebody does come in and does outthink me, I'm not mad at them if it makes the pie bigger. What makes me mad is that sometimes people come into an industry and all they really want to do is take a piece of the existing pie.
Yes.
Which is the guy sitting up on the hill watching the war go on and then comes down after the war's over and shoots all the dead people. Like, that's not competition to me. That's bullshit. Like, those are the kind of people that I have no interest in, and I don't mind smothering them out and kicking their ass out of my industry, because they're just coming in trying to take advantage of what other people's hard work is done.
So when you mention if you happen to have a competitor who's better than you, which you don't want, and no one wants that, but innately, doesn't that make you like step your game up even more?
Sometimes. I mean, I always want to know who's best. I think the message to people that are watching is that if you're really interested in something, and my question is why would you do anything if you don't want to be the best? And if you really did want to be the best at it, then you need to know who the best is. You need to do that research. You need to understand what you're competing against. Yeah. I've always looked at whoever was doing whatever I was doing and made sure I understood the landscape so I knew whose ass I was kicking. Yeah. I was never interested again in being second best. For when I was in the restaurant business or what have you. So I ask, I go to a business school and I speak to a bunch of business people, or even a sales group for Guardian Life. And I'm like, you guys want to be the best, but do you know who sells the most insurance? Do you know who the most important and major business people are in this country right now? And have you watched, because now it's a couple clicks and a pick. Back 30 years ago, you had to do some real research. You had to connive your way into somebody's office to see what they had going on. Now everything's online. Yep. So if you're getting into the health club business, you need to go around this country, find out who's running the best health clubs and why, who has the highest level of margin, memberships, and now you know what you need to beat. And by the way, you may be able to steal a few ideas along the way, which is fine, right? I mean, people have been stealing my ideas forever and a day, which is, that's a form of flattery too. But at the end, know who you're competing against. And why would you be in a business that you don't want to be the best? If you're going to be a Broadway show producer, then why wouldn't you interview with as many Broadway show producers as possible to understand, first of all, how they got there, what it takes to be the best, and then what it takes to beat the best. But most people aren't, they talk about wanting to be really good and how important their brand is, but then when it comes to doing the work and when it really comes to doing that kind of mindset, because that doesn't show up on a line item in a P&L. Because the truth will set you free, yes, but it will piss you off first. And at the end, if you're out there and you really want to do something special with your life, then you need to go find out the truth. You need to understand the commitment and what's out there, what it takes to beat them. And a lot of people, the difference why they don't become the best that ever was is simple reason. And I talk about this in Living on Purpose. You don't have the stamina. You don't have the mental and emotional stamina to hang in long enough to compete for that long, to do all the things you need to do every day to kick other people's ass. Yep. Like the thing I'm most proud of this 30 years of Steiner. I don't know how many more years I'm going, whatever, but 30 years I've been, just grinding and fighting and scrapping to not only beat my competitors, but to be the best. And also to being the best means you got to lead the way. You got to come up with ideas that no one else has. Exactly. If you want to be a real leader. And that takes a lot of thought, and you don't always get a lot of credit for that.
So that's no. I love it. So
that was a lot there, but that's how I feel in my core.
That's why this is what I want. Like this, this is what I want. I want to understand why you feel the way you do. So I want to get back to one thing. You mentioned, you were in the restaurant business, and I get it, and I know a little bit of the bio, but if people, when you got into the sports industry and sports marketing, and if people were going to look at you and be like, okay, he's the best, so I got to measure myself up against that guy, he's kicking everyone's fucking ass, blah, 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 they can't pick up some of these skills that probably come naturally to you, which is being a people person, having the EQ or whatever. So what do you say to people who don't have that? Because it's clear you do. Like, I've seen your interactions. Like, it's very personable. This is personable. But, like, not everyone has that, but they might have the business sense.
I mean, you find your rhythm. A lot of times it's a partnership. You're part of a group that can do what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Some people are equipped to do it individually. I mean, I had some special skills that I probably learned at an early age, and frankly, I'm not sure that a 10 or 11-year-old should have to go learn the skills that maybe I've learned. Maybe so that's maybe my disadvantage that turned into my advantage, frankly. But, at the end, we all have special skills on a real high level, if you want to push those buttons. They're not all the same, but depending on what you're trying to accomplish, a lot of times, like, even though I have an accounting degree, to give you an example, and I definitely understand the back end and the measurement and the analytics of a business. It's not my strength. Mm-hmm. It's not something that I really enjoy doing, and I'm frankly not that good at it. But I happen to marry a woman who ended up being a CPA, Wharton grad, University of Chicago grad, who's a brilliant, back end finance accounting. She ended up being my partner. Never did we think we were going to work together, but she ends up being my partner and ends up getting me the bank loans, straining out my business on the back end, which is very complex when you talk about thousands of SKUs. So, you find your way of, the goal is really not to be the end all, do it all, be it all, but the goal is to really feel where your strength is and what you could be extraordinary at, and then surround yourself with the right people that you can trust. I always say the P word is used, partnership. And so, you are going to need some partners. Now, if I didn't have my wife, or I was lucky enough to have my wife, it could maybe be a bank, but a special bank relationship, or it could be a financial person that invests, that adds a certain element to help you. And just to compound that thought, even when I could have sold my company back in 2000, which I did, I had 4 or 5 really serious offers and took less money to go with the partner that had the more strong financial back end of it all. I knew I didn't need the glitter, the glitz, the hype. I knew I needed the strongest back end because that was my weakness. Yep. So even though my wife was there and I wasn't sure she was going to not want to stay in the business for how long, I went with a company I knew that would supplement me. Yep. And I went with a company called Omnicom, which is really a conglomerate that most people probably never heard of. Very, very strong on the back end, that buy best in category and support best in category, but really will help you tremendously on the back end. So, talent acquisition and partnership acquisition is probably the biggest decision you're going to make, is the few key people that work for you, but who you partner with can make your life. I mean, there's not many things that can make your life miserable, but you marry the wrong person, that's a starter. You have to give you tremendous thought to that. Like, I tell people all the time, it's like, listen, I believe, I married my love of my life, who I met at 17, and it's just an amazing story that I'm able to find her, even though we went out in high school, didn't see her for 10 years, and then we get back together. But you can't put enough emphasis on that decision, to really make sure that it's right as much as you can, of sharing ideas, sharing everything, because when that marriage thing doesn't work, it's misery. And then same thing with your business partners. I mean, I have so many people that sold companies for maybe more money than I did, but ended up being miserable because they did it for the money, didn't create those partnerships for the right reasons. And anytime you don't create partnerships for the right reasons, and they're not authentic, and they're not don't 100% feel right, they get out of those partnerships. There's nothing worse than have to separate the record albums, figuring out who's yours and who's mine. We always talk about that back in the day when you had record albums and you live with a girl and you decided you're trying to figure out whose albums were whose and whose TVs were whose and all that stuff. So I think, you could talk about, that's the thing I try to tell the young kids that are entrepreneurs is like, it is important to come up with a great idea, but it's really just one aspect. Who you're joining forces with, who you're going to get the money from, how you set your business up, who's going to handle your financial end if you're this out front salesperson. Or who's going to handle the sales aspect if you're a back-end person. Who's going to handle the hiring and the internal culture of your business, which is critical. Who handles the feeling of your of your business, like, when people get time off and what the place is going to feel like. You're going to be bringing lunches in, food in, what it feels like when your employees come to work is huge. And it's very difficult for one person to control all that.
Yeah. So I understand completely. I am not at the point right now where I need this officer or this partner or anything yet. I'm still literally 7 months into this thing. But I hope to get there one day. But for you, you've been doing this 30 years. You've been doing it very successfully. Tell me, and obviously not naming names or anything, but times where you've had partnerships that failed, because I see as young entrepreneurs, if you start to get any little bit of rhythm, anyone who's willing to help you, it's so flattering, and you're like, you know what, man, like, yeah, let's do it. And then you just find out, like you said, they're in it for the wrong reasons, or maybe there's an ulterior motive, whatever it is. Do you have any examples of partnerships that you were just like, shit?
I mean, there's a ton, but I'm pretty careful. If you look at my track record of who I put next to mine, and most of those have been long-standing relationships that I haven't managed to maintain. But yeah, I mean, listen, I had a partnership with the Cubs, Dodgers, didn't work out, guessed wrong. Was it all my fault? Probably not, but I probably didn't really think hard about how that relationship was really going to work and how it could be effective, with me being here and those teams being Chicago and LA, for example. I've had key employees that I really didn't think, and this is really hard for entrepreneurs, by the way, when you get started, is who do you put a ring on? Who do you give a ring to? Who do you put their name? There's a show called Suits on TV, and they're always fighting about whose name's going to be up on the wall. And it really does dramatize it, but it's true. I mean, employees want credit. Employees want that kind of notification and substantiation, and it's hard. I've lost a lot of good employees because I didn't think far enough out about what their career and substance plan could be. As you chop up the company as far as not only incentives and bonuses, but how it would feel. And it's hard to maintain that. And that's probably one of my biggest weaknesses is losing a lot of good employees over the years, because you're growing and things are happening fast, and people are online wanting to work for you because we have a new idea, and yet you're losing people that have blood, sweat, and tears with you. I think that's probably been one of the more difficult things.
I interviewed one woman, she's CEO, and she's talked about what you're talking about. She goes, I had these two friends who were with me for the first 4 years of the business, and they were incredible. Like, it never would have got to where we were at that 4-year point, but I outgrew them. And that was the worst and toughest conversations I had to have. So she's like, now I know when I hire people on, we'll be like, this relationship might be finite. Like, there just might be a point where you can't give me what I need anymore, or I can't give you what you need anymore, and then we might have to part ways. So I want to get to the point of the show, which is called Flashpoint. And Flashpoint is the temperature at which fuel will combust given an ignition source. So I kind of look at us like we are like a fuel tank, and certain things happen throughout our lives that just have an enormous effect on the trajectory of where we're going, how we see the world, how we interact with people, how your business might go. And I always give a couple examples. When I left Amazon, I respect them, but I hated working there. I left and I did this. My life has never been better. I'm broker than ever, but I don't give a shit. Like, everything's fantastic. That's a good flashpoint. When I lost a bunch of friends in the Marine Corps, not a good flashpoint, but I learned a lot about the type of people I want to surround myself with, which is hugely important. So I'm sure you've had many flashpoints. But are there any that stick out that completely influenced who you are today, or changed the trajectory of how you perceive your business or life? And I'd love to hear.
There's so many. Just because I made a living off of flashpoints. Yeah. So, it's been my whole thing about flashpoints, moments in time, and things that change everything, whether it be for fun or for real. I think, obviously when I was 10, when the teacher gave me a boatload of money, or an envelope of money to buy clothes, and I realized that it's the first time I realized I didn't probably have what was necessary. I didn't have what was needed, clothing. It was embarrassing, and I didn't want to feel that again. Certainly when I had my paper route and I went to speak to my mom about how to grow that route, I was very frustrated, and she explained to me how important it is to realize if I'm selling something that someone else is selling, not to expect people just to buy it. You got to differentiate yourself. And when you are selling something, you got to solve a problem and serve people. Come up with something that can really help people, not just sell people what you have and expect them to buy it. I think that was a huge game changer in how I looked at business, just for my stupid little paper route. Amazing. I think when I did Yankee Steiner, 2 years to do that deal, and that also gave me the feeling like, you could dream big. There is nothing that, if you put your mind to it, and more, again, solve, serve, think about what you could do. Most people look at Yankee Stadium as a money grab, but it was really about how do we take care of Yankee fans. That's when I also realized the power of brand with the Yankees, that they were walking and talking the talk. They cared about their customers, they cared about their fans, and they didn't want them to buy fake stuff. And they found a partner in me that can maybe help resolve that problem, and then we ended up building a company around that. Yeah. I think when I beat Michael Jordan, when I went back to his camp and kicked his ass, and I know that, if I played him 100 times, but when you picturealize stuff, and you actually sometimes need to go and get outside yourself and really picturealize things way greater and bigger than you can ever even imagine, and then work backwards is a great technique of accomplishing things. So people always ask me, like, when you started Steiner, did you ever think you'd be this successful? I'm like, yeah, I did. Of course, you think I started this thing thinking I was going to fail? I had wide dreams and aspirations. They kind of changed, but I had dreams that I'd own multiple companies and do all kinds of multiple things. And so, yeah, I did. And I think dreaming big is a very, very underrated aspect of becoming successful. I think it's important that you give yourself the time and the creativity and the fun of dreaming big, because it's free. So I think that for me is a huge, what ended up being a weirdness when I was a kid, because people would see me walking down the street, I'd walk right by them, not even notice they were there, or in school, because I was constantly daydreaming. I was a huge daydreamer, and it did make it weird, and people did think I was a little strange. But it ended up becoming a huge advantage, because the aptitude and the depth that I was able to dream, mainly because I wasn't really particularly fond of where I was at quite a bit. So why stay there? Get out of there as much as you can, but go to a place that's interesting. And if you can make up a lot of that shit, great. And it's just what I was doing constantly. And then eventually I used that technique to my advantage.
I interviewed James Orsini over at Vayner, and I was interviewing him, and I asked him a question about Gary. I go, how do you kind of wrangle him when he's all over the place or whatever? He goes, you never wrangle a dreamer. He goes, you let them run free, which seems like the people who have really thrived. And I don't look at companies who thrive as just like, being top of the market and making a ton of money. It looks like people with really deep relationships, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think relationship building is huge. I just want to say one thing about Gary Vee. I'm a fan and a friend of his, and I've got to hang with Gary a bunch. Yeah. I think Gary's strength, not to overplay his hand, because I think he's a relatively smart guy. Yeah. I think his listening skills are insane. I think his ability to actually listen to what you're saying and digest that and actually hear you, see you. I tell people all the time in sales, it's not about being the smartest guy in the room. It's about, you see your customer? Can you really see them? And are you really listening? And it's amazing how many people can't do that. It's amazing how many restaurants I go to and I ask for something specifically, and I'm really serious about the way I want my eggs or the way I want my salad, and I don't get it. And then it's not even a thought that they didn't even bring it to me the way I wanted it. And I repeated it twice. And I think that in general, I see that happening with husbands and wives. Your wife will tell you what she wants. It's not that complicated. Your spouse will tell you. But it's amazing how we can't, and you always talk about how important it is to listen, but I think Gary Vee's real strength, having hung with him a bunch of times, it's amazing how he can be in that moment and really, really listen. And one of my big takeaways from him is, I don't think anything he says is that unbelievably, oh my God, this is an MC squared, blah, blah, blah. But it is amazing how he can digest really what you're saying, see you, hear you, and respond to you in a way that really is authentic and accurate. Yep. So many times you talk to somebody and they're responding, it's not even accurate. Like, are you wondering, what I just said? Oh, no. I wasn't talking Japanese. You repeating back? Yeah. So I think that's an important thing to note when you're out there. Is like, really, and back to my newspaper story. Like, if you can really listen to your customers and really have an interest in serving them, more importantly than selling them, serve rather than sell. You'd be surprised how fast your company can grow, and that's always been my interest. Yeah. It really going way back, and back to the papers, but in the restaurant business, and then even at Steiner, I have kids that we just take care of that I knew I'd never. These are 8, 10-year-old kids that are now 30, 40, and they remember me taking them and their dads to their first games, remembering them meeting players. And it was more than just that, because I cared. And now all of a sudden those kids are customers.
That's unbelievable.
You got to play the long game, and that's the thing. It's like, when you play the long game. Back to what you were saying before, the relationship part of it all. I think most people that know me know that relationships are everything.
Yeah.
And just because you have a name and somebody likes you doesn't mean you have a relationship.
1000%.
And that's sometimes I think what's steering people a little the wrong way. I spend hours going through my bases, keeping in touch with people, checking in on them, and see if I can help them or whatever. And that's a part of my day. Not just out there deep sea fishing, how I get my next sale, my next deal. But it's not who you know, what you know, but what you know about who. And I think you take your time to make sure you keep measuring and managing the people you do know. And it's amazing, like we just talked at the beginning of this interview, how much life changes. Well, it changes for everyone. But how would you know about some of your friends and some of the people you even know about their changes unless you ask?
I know.
So you want to know why your business isn't growing? It's because your relationships aren't growing. Because you're so busy looking for the next relationship instead of maneuvering and managing the ones you have. And I feel like a master of it. And because I enjoy it. I don't mind calling somebody up from 20 years ago, just checking in. How you doing?
Exactly.
You lost your job? How you doing? How can I help you? Like, I can't give you any business right now, Brandon. I know. It's okay. But I'm here for you.
Yeah.
I know the day I leave Steiner, I know that my Rolodex is going to shrink substantially. But something, it won't shrink from me. Like, I don't need to get something out of every person that I know.
Yes.
I just, to me, I'd rather be a give and a give.
Yep.
As opposed to, they talk about the give and take. I'm like, I'm not big on that. No. It's a two-way street. No, it's a three-way street. I'd rather be giving twice as much as what I'm receiving and stay ahead of the curve. And I'm good with it.
And we could end here, but I mean, like, everything you said gives me so much confidence, at least as an individual, that I'm on the right path, because I think altruism is the most underestimated piece of business, period. And literally every time I meet someone, I just interviewed 4 veteran entrepreneurs before I got here to you. I took a freaking cab all the way over here because I'm like, I'm not going to be late. The train's taking too long. And I immediately knew 5 minutes into the conversation the people I needed to connect them with immediately. So,
but what people don't realize in this book is that what most people don't think, and you read all these business books, and what I've come to realize after all these years, that faith is so important, because if you believe in what we just talked about doing the right thing, listening to people, doing more for them than that they could do for you, or just doing stuff for people that maybe they can never do anything for you, that's faith. Faith, putting out good, not worrying so much what you're getting back.
Yes.
That's how I start this book, and most people don't see it coming because they see me as a wheeling, dealing, fast talking, hustling Brooklyn guy. And I am. I know what I am. I mean, I can go and hang on a street corner with the best of them. But what I've learned and what's taken me to a really special level is the faith in relationship building, the faith that when you do good, you don't always have to get something back. You don't have to put notoriety on it. Just do as much good as you can. Because faith, if you want to be extraordinary, is huge. And you can't see it. It's not a line item. It's not something that pops up in your P&L. But if you don't have faith, and by the way, back to your original question, is like, why'd you write this book? I had no faith. I had no idea what even faith was. I'm not going to lie. I mean, faith was like praying that Derek Jeter would get a hit in the 9th inning when the bases were loaded. And we were down 2 runs. Like, I didn't know what faith was. Like, and something, that's what has transpired for me, particularly in the last 20 years, is incorporating faith and just trusting that good things will happen when you just do good.
Yep. Karmic circle is what I like to call it. Put good karma out. Hopefully it'll come back, but I never expect anything at anyone. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I certainly have faith in, and a lot of the things you're talking about resonate with me, and I think it's going to resonate with the audience. I appreciate your candidness, although I've never heard you not candid, so that's good. But thank you so much, and Living on Purpose. So we could find it on Amazon. I already saw it. I already got a couple emails
and
from
also
you.
there's some specials on BrandonSteiner.com, and you get the 22 laws of negotiating for free. And you go on there. Actually, we have like a buy one, get one, and we do some special where you get some free gifts with the book on BrandonSteiner.com.
I think I saw if you buy 20 or more, something like that, then you might do a speaking engagement, something along those lines.
Yeah,
but
there's a special if you buy X amount of books, and then I just like playing around with the stuff. I mean, to me, all the money, just on the last thought, is like all the money for my speaking and the books all go to charity. And I've done hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of charity work, more now than I've ever had, which is a blessing. So everybody out there, thank you for the support. Even if it's buying a book, it helps some kid get clothing, a mattress, or a YMCA or a STEM program. But I just really enjoy the work that my wife and I, that I've been able to do even more now than ever.
You sound very blessed. Where can people find you on Instagram? It's Brandon Steiner and Steiner Sports.
Yeah, and it's also, I'm a big LinkedIn guy. I love my LinkedIn. You got to follow me because I'm over that limit. But if you follow me, and also if you message me, I always answer.
Okay.
I try to answer almost all my Facebook messages too. I'm very active on Facebook, but you never know if you're going to get the posts.
Yep.
And then if you go on brandonsteiner.com, you get the blog. There's a place for you to leave comments.
Yep.
I answer them all though.
Yep.
All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Please check out some of the previous episodes. I've had Heather Monahan on. I've had Gary Vaynerchuk on. Sean Cannell, CEO of Think Media. This is what I love to do, and if you love to listen, I would really appreciate leaving a rating or leaving a review. That always helps, and I want to make sure that entrepreneurs and veteran entrepreneurs are getting all this information because it's what's going to help them get to the next level. I hope. Take care. Bye.